Good morning, everyone. My name's Keith Keeley, and I'm really happy that you're here and really pleased to welcome you here. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, traditional land of the Ho-Chunk people, and I welcome you wherever you are. Really glad that you're here. I'm going to take the opportunity this morning to share a little bit of perspective on what the Perennial Farm Gathering is, at least from my point of view, and what's its meaning and why we're all here today. We each come with our own reasons, but a little look back into the history of this gathering, I think, will be a great way for us to start the day. In addition to the yoga, which was actually the best way to start the day. So thank you, Laura, for that. Feeling a lot of warmth just from catching the end of that. So thank you. So where to start here? Let me just tell you a little bit about Savannah Institute. So for those of you who don't know us, thank you for taking the time to be here and getting to know us a little bit. When we got started, Savannah Institute was it was a small group of farmers and researchers who got together to share their experience, to learn from each other. There was no staff. There were graduate students, farmers, community members, and we've grown since then. But that coming together, people meeting and learning from each other, that was the reason that Savannah Institute started as an organization, and that remains the reason that we're an organization today. So that's really the heart and soul, I think, of the Perennial Farm Gathering and Savannah Institute's DNA. So thank you for being here and making it possible for Savannah Institute to be the Savannah Institute and for us to learn from each other. I want to invite you to, in the spirit of that gathering and learning from each other, to start taking advantage of that chat bar. And in addition to, if you'd like to, introducing yourself and where you're at, I invite you to share an interesting thing or a valuable thing that you learned over the last year. And it might be about agroforestry, perennial crops, or pastured livestock, or it might be about anything in life that you want to share. But sharing something that you learned, if you'd like to, in the chat is what I'd like to invite you to share, while I share some of the look back into the history of the Perennial Farm Gathering and what it is. I also want to note that here we are gathering digitally again, and really appreciate folks who've been on Zoom calls for who knows how many months now, continuing to connect with each other this way. And I think being able to share in the chat is actually one of the benefits that we found of meeting digitally. So, but also we're mindful and hopeful that as the days get longer and we come out of winter, we're also coming out of this season that's required us to keep our distance in some ways. And so we're really looking forward to the seasons ahead where we can come together in person. And so we haven't published our events calendar this year yet, but I want to invite you to look out for that. And if you can, take an opportunity to join us and join with each other in the field this year. Especially, we'll have some events in Spring Green, Wisconsin, where Savannah Institute is setting up our campus. So I invite you to come join us there and be a part of that as well. So with that, let me take a moment to share my screen. And let me see if I can do this in a full screen mode. Okay, maybe Kate or someone, can you tell me, can you still see me and see the screen okay? Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Okay, great. So welcome to the Perennial Farm Gathering. I have scraped together from the various digital archives some photographs from Perennial Farm Gatherings in years past. And this, as I understand it, this was before I was a part of the scene, was the first Perennial Farm Gathering, which was just called the Farmer Dinner. And it was some farmers and Savannah Institute board members and folks sitting around a table connecting and sharing with each other. And the next year we moved into a classroom. Can you see the next slide here?
Nope, the slides didn't advance.
Slides didn't advance. Okay, let me try it this way then. There, can you see it now? Yeah, okay, so there's the first perennial farm gathering, the farmer dinner. I'll just stay out of the full screen mode there. And then give you a chance to soak that in, the spirit of our gathering around a table here. In 2014, in 2015, we grew a little bit and moved into a classroom at the Common Ground Co-op in Urbana. And you might see a few familiar faces there. Matt Wilson's in the background there, who's joined our staff now. And then in the foreground, you can see Cathe Capel there, who is one of the people that we're going to recognize and present an award to today. So Cathe, great to see you a part of the community from early on. Really, really wonderful. Then in 2016, we moved to Kate Potter's farmhouse and enjoyed a keynote on the fruits and nuts at Redfern Farm from Tom Wall. And some familiar faces in there too. Scott and Sandy Williams, who host a Savannah Institute demo farm. Will Babler, who's a Savannah Institute board member, and many other friends. That might have been the first year that Mark and Tammy Allen joined us. They've been longtime perennial farm gathering friends. 2017, we moved to Grays Lake in the Byron Colby barn. Dale Secker, who has a farm outside of Madison, along with his wife and son, gave a nice, a wonderful keynote about their efforts with uncommon fruit crops. And then we did we did a walkaround at the farm there at Prairie Crossing as well to talk about agroforestry there, which I understand has taken root and continued to grow since we had the perennial farm gathering there in 2017. We actually did a second perennial farm gathering in 2017 when we moved it to the first part of winter in November, and we co-hosted with the Greenlands Blue Waters that year. So that was a wonderful joint event, and we continued to grow when we held it again that year, the following year, at the same location, and invited Greg Judy, a farmer rancher from Missouri, to give us a keynote presentation. And Greg, along with many other things that make the gathering wonderful, drew in a crowd that continued to grow, and we outgrew that space. And so the next year, and continued to move around, we moved to Cincinnati Mound Center near Dubuque, and Reginaldo Haslett Marroquin gave us a keynote presentation at the tail end of 2019. And for many of us, that was one of the last big group gatherings that we were part of before lockdown began. And that was, I think, a wonderful perennial farm gathering for many people. Here's a little screenshot of what the room where we gathered together looked like. And one of the nutshell presentations here, which I'll talk about in just a moment, what are nutshell presentations. In 2020, we moved online and had a keynote panel that included Dr. Jafunza Wright-Carter, Olivia Watkins, and Kathy Dice. And it was really a remarkable pivot in many ways for us to hold that gathering online. And both our staff and the community that were a part of it really made it a meaningful gathering, I thought, and hardly missed stride for it being online. And there are some other screenshots out there of that gathering, but there's just a lot of great things that happened in a lot of different Zoom rooms. And we learned a lot about how to host an online gathering too. And I don't note it in these slides, but then we hosted the North American Agroforestry Congress or Conference just 6 or 7 months later, which was a smashing success as well. We also did lots of other things online too. This was our staff having a holiday party and being a little silly and connecting with each other online too. And then here we are this year, where we have a wonderful keynote panel I'm looking forward to, as I'm sure all of you are, with Beth Dooley, Eliza Greenman, Anna LePay, and Dana Burtness. So we'll look forward to hearing from them in a little bit. And that's a little look back at where we've come to today, to the Perennial Farm Gathering. And so as you've seen, we've adapted and grown and changed, and that's, I think, all as it should be. I just want to note a few more things about this year and getting back to the basics in some ways, that it's really about focusing on connections and sharing our experiences. So to do that, we have a fairly simple program that's one day, and then we'll have other events that build on that through the season ahead too. So I encourage you to stay a part of connecting with each other as we go through that. So today, after this welcome, we'll be moving into awards to honor two of our community members, Cathe, Capel and Kevin Wolz, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. And then following the awards presentation, we'll move to our keynote conversation. And after a break for lunch, we'll move into an afternoon of nutshell presentations. So what are those nutshell presentations? That's something we started doing very early on in the Perennial Farm Gathering, and giving ourselves the 5-minute piece has been pretty standard from the beginning, of a simple who am I, where am I coming from, what am I interested in, and a few things that I've learned. And then that has allowed our community to find folks who do a lot of different things and find each other and connect with each other around our different passions and things we want to learn from each other. So, and it's always been open sourced too, in a sense. So it's something that some people plan ahead and some people just decide the day of, oh, I'd like to share something too. So if you'd like to give a nutshell today, you can start thinking about that. And perhaps this afternoon, there'll be a space for you to do that. And I wonder, Kate, if you've been monitoring the chat here, if there's a few things you've seen people bring up that you thought might make a good nutshell or just worth a call out.
Well, I saw two so far. One was this really recent sort of tidbit about honeybees. And a little bit earlier in the chat, we heard, I got to scroll back for your name, but Nicholas Frillman shared this great bit about elderberries. And I think both of those would make wonderful nutshells if you're not already planning, but also just wonderful to hear.
Great, thank you. Well, I hope we will hear from more of you, both in the chat and the nutshells this afternoon. Always a favorite. The PFG has always been about looking ahead too. And so one of the things that has been a part of the gathering at different times is sharing what we want to learn in the years ahead. So that's something I'd also invite you to share in the chat, is what's something that you're looking forward to learning or hoping to learn. And then that'll be a great way for folks who might be able to help you learn about that, connect with you too. And that's been a way that's really directed the way Savannah Institute has gone about its work too. There was an early PFG where there was a lot of enthusiasm around how livestock can be integrated into diverse perennial systems. And that led to a number of different lines of work and programming, grants, partnerships with farms doing research around silvopasture. And so encourage you to share what you'd like to learn as well. One other thing I'd like to invite, and this might be the last thing that I really invite folks to participate in, is as I wrap up some of these welcome comments and thank yous here, I'm going to remove my spotlight for a minute if I can, and ask folks to share, if you're comfortable, just if you're comfortable, no pressure, share your screen with each other. And so we can feel that sort of connectedness and togetherness. And then if you're savvy enough on Zoom, you can change your view in the upper right-hand corner from speaker to gallery mode. And that gives us the checkerboard effect of who's in the room. So we can smile at each other and wave at each other and, scroll through. There's probably multiple pages. So click that little blue arrow and see who's across the digital spaces to join with each other. Really wonderful to see all of you. A lot of familiar faces and new faces too, that I look forward to getting a chance to interact today and hopefully in the future as well. So take the time to connect through today. That's what this is about. Use the chat. There's a direct message function if you want to call out somebody specifically, and or share a message with the group at any point. I also will point out that if you need help with any of this, we've got a help desk Zoom line that you should have gotten in your email registration. So if you have any questions for SI staff or just want to dip out of the main session, you can always go over to the help desk, where there's always a good time to be had as well. I want to be sure to thank the organizers here. Michelle and Christy and Kate on our staff have done an amazing job as always to make this possible. So thank you, Christy, Michelle, and Kate, and lots of other staff too who are helping with tech and moderating. So thanks everybody for helping it run smoothly. I want to thank our speakers and yoga teachers and everyone sharing their time and perspective and knowledge, and want to thank our sponsors and folks who offered donations in their registration for bringing financial resources to help make this possible and free of charge this year too. That's I'm really grateful for that. And maybe most of all, I want to thank each and all of you for being here. It's really what makes it possible. And I really feel deeply that Savannah Institute is not about Savannah Institute. It's about all of us together and what we do together to make the world a beautiful and just and diverse place with farms that are full of trees that we take care of, and trees that take care of us. So yeah, it'd be great to connect with you today. And I invite you once again to come to one of our events this year, or host your own events or gatherings, and invite SI folks if you'd like to. And I want to encourage us all to give a focus again this year on widening our circle. Let's do the work to be welcoming and inclusive, so people can continue to bring new perspectives into our shared vision. The several hundred people here, we have incredible power and possibility, and we have a lot to offer and a lot to learn from each other. So let's move on from monocultures, and let's flourish in the diversity of life, and let's put down deeper roots. We all depend on the land, and we all depend on each other.
On that note, I have an exciting but slightly technical announcement. Turns out that this Zoom link, we have too many people for it. There are a lot of people who are waiting to get in. So if you all can wait just a minute, we're going to share a new link to a room that everyone can join. It's, a wonderful technical problem to have. So we're gonna drop it in the chat, and then we're also gonna update the link on the website. I might take a minute or two, so maybe just hang tight. And great moment to think about a nutshell if you haven't already thought of one to share, or to share something cool in the chat.
I can fill some of that silence with kind of an impromptu announcement too. I'm Matt. I work here at the Savannah Institute, and we have partnered with John Hendrickson at the University of Wisconsin here over the past few years, actually, to develop an Excel tool called the Fruit and Nut Compass. And he is looking for farmers to test it out now. So it's been a long process to get it working, and it's a really amazing tool for multi-species, multi-year planning for these kinds of systems that we work with. And he's hoping to find farmers to do test runs with it. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll put my email in the chat here, and shoot me an email and we'll get you connected. Thanks.
Okay. Matt, that was a wonderful interlude. I'm going to spotlight Michelle. She's going to update us on the tech situation. There might actually not, it might not need to move. So Michelle, oh man, are you ready to share?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Apologies for the technical difficulties. We have upgraded and now we don't need any link. You can all just hang out here. Huge high five to Christy. She's amazing. We're good to go. What fun.
All right. Cheers to Christy and Michelle, Kate, for saving the day once again. It wouldn't be a proper conference without some scrambling. So really appreciate the scrambling and everybody's understanding that we're doing this all together. So with that, our next session here is the Deep Roots and New Shoots Awards. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what these awards are and then who we're presenting them to and what that's all about. So the purpose of these awards is to honor and to celebrate members of our community who put their heart and their soul into this shared vision of a more diverse and a more perennial agriculture. And we just started doing this last year. Was the first year that we gave the Deep Roots Award, which we presented to Paul Johnson. And many of you, I imagine, were not a part of that session, so I'll just say a word about it to give you some history and context. Paul was a forester and a farmer in Iowa, raised dairy, cattle, and Christmas trees with his family. And he had a career that spanned working with trees and people in the Peace Corps, and then a career in public service that culminated in many ways as the chief of the USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service. And Paul, among his many gifts, championed a vision of farms as more than centers of production. But farms as a part of the phrase he liked to use was a geography of hope, places of beauty and abundance now and into the future. And farms are places where nature and people cooperate and make community. And so it was a very meaningful opportunity to recognize Paul at that session, and it became more meaningful and poignant in that we lost Paul just weeks later after the gathering as his health declined. But Paul's vision remains, and he was quick to thank his predecessors for that vision too, and it remains vital. So our awardees today share that vision and have in their own ways put their heart and soul into moving that vision forward. So before I introduce the awardees, let me say a few words about adding an award this year. So in addition to the Deep Roots Award, today we'll present a New Shoots Award, and shoots in the sense of plants that put up new shoots from the same roots and have new growth that way. So this is an award for an emerging leader meant to recognize someone early in their career who is already making an impact and who's inspiring others with their passion for our shared vision of a diverse and perennial agriculture, and someone who's a vital part of building the community to bring that vision to life. So with that, I want to start recognizing Cathe Capel as our awardee that we would like to present the Deep Roots Award to this year. And so I'll start by making just a few remarks about Cathe and my wonderful experiences with her. And then we have several people who would like to share some of their reflections about Cathe and her life and work as well. Cathe, who I pointed out in one of those early Perennial Farm Gathering photographs, has been a part of Savannah Institute since before it was Savannah Institute, when it was simply people who were interested in agroforestry in central Illinois, what some might call the most unlikely of places for trees on farms to become a passion. But I think it was that passion that really drew people together there. And Cathe's been a vital part of that for the Savannah Institute community for a long time. And I've always appreciated Cathe in that she's, without any fanfare, brought herself and her full self to community gatherings, and has always been eager to put her passions towards the greater cause. And just a few of those passions and things that she's brought to the greater cause that I might mention are Cathe's friendliness, which is immediately disarming and welcoming, and I think a hallmark of what our community strives for, and brings a lot of curiosity to, another hallmark of our community, really looking to learn from each other. Cathe raises sheep, and so that passion for integrating livestock as an integral part of agricultural ecosystems has always been something that has been a real value to our community from early on. And Cathe's a landowner as well, and has made her land available for all sorts of experimental plantings, field days, research projects, and has worked a lot with numerous Savannah Institute staff and community members in that, and has worked a lot with Kevin Wolz, who you'll hear from today too. Cathe's been a very generous financial donor to Savannah Institute as well. As I mentioned, she's hosted field days, welcomed people to her farm. She's been a part of filming for educational materials and shared her perspective on camera, which is not something that's easy for everyone. Cathe's been a member of our advisory council since we started that in 2017. And she recently this year donated 3 bags full of wool from her sheep for an art project that we worked on in cooperation with another organization in southern Wisconsin. And most recently, Cathe has made 120 acres of her family's land available for a new Savannah Institute demonstration farm, which has the opportunity to become one of the real flagship demonstrations of alley cropping, especially, that you might find anywhere. So Cathe's soft-spoken generally, but she's solid as a rock and very clear in her purpose, as I've seen it, at least, to make the world a better place through how we farm and how we care for each other in the land. So I want to thank you, Cathe, for all of that. It's really a pleasure to be able to recognize you today, and a privilege to be able to do so. And with that, I want to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Katie Adams, if you're prepared to be to speak on Cathe's behalf. And if you're not ready, Katie, then I can move to another person, and then you can take your turn.
Thanks so much, Keith. I am so excited to be here today to honor my friend and mentor, Cathe. Before I met Cathe, I honestly didn't care so much for sheep. I believed all the usual tropes, that they're kind of dumb, they spook easy, and they can die even easier. In fact, thanks to a few years as an archaeological curation technician, I developed a phobia of sheep teeth. But in just a few months, and maybe even a few weeks of meeting and working alongside Cathe and her flock, I saw a whole other side to these animal relatives. With Cathe's mentorship, sheep transformed from creatures needing constant protection to profound teachers of human and animal behavior. As a shepherd, Cathe views her sheep as kin and treats them as such. She takes the sheep for who they are, observant and cautious, with deep connection to their flock mates. She approaches them as a guest in their space, with respect, care, and understanding. Sheep are not tools for production, but allies in the creation of mutual benefit. For Cathe, relationships with animals and humans and the natural world are not purely transactional, but transformational. The name of her farm is a prime example. Named Seven Sisters in honor of the family who lived and worked the land before her, she views herself as one part of a larger history and future. The location in which this value on relationship manifests most publicly is through Vulcan and Hudson Farms, located in Sidney and Urbana, Illinois. These landscapes, natively timber and prairie, had been felled and plowed for agriculture before she came to be their steward. Knowing how important trees were to the landscape, Cathe looked to find folks who could help transform those spaces that did not have deep roots any longer. These farms are established with generosity, abundance, and hope at their core. Cathe once told me that she's not a tree person, but I find that really hard to believe after shaking pawpaws, plucking persimmons off the ground, and sampling grapes from the vine together. And after all, she is making it possible for thousands of trees and perennials to flourish once again on these abused Central Illinois soils. More privately, deep relationships look like meals thoughtfully prepared in Cathe's kitchen, meaningful gifts such as the shawl I used in my wedding, and the greatest gift of all, her sharing of time and wisdom. For the past 3 years, I have been immensely lucky to call Cathe my mentor, friend, and family. My life has been transformed, both personally and professionally, through Cathe's wisdom, support, strength, and tenacity. I learned more in the first year I worked with Cathe than in all my previous ones working with livestock. Cathe taught me how to walk, talk, interact, and see animals in a completely different way. That first year, she supported me in raising my first 100 meat birds, providing mentorship on everything from sourcing to brooding, to feeding, to setting up slaughter dates. And we had such a high success rate, and they grained so much faster than normal that I ended up having to buy a kiddie pool and fill it with ice just to get them home from the processor, because I didn't plan on enough cooler space. That was also the year of the joys of bottle baby Fiona and pants-eating buffalo lamb, and the hardness of dispatching a few ill chicks and the turkey that swallowed the string. I looked forward to every Tuesday and Thursday when I would start my days with feedings and pasture checks, body conditions, and stall mucking. In that year, I learned I could do this work because I learned from someone who did the work with confidence, ease, intention, and deep care. I could sit here and tell 100 stories that brag about Cathe. One's about how she's an amazing listener and advice giver. One's about how inspiring her life is as a woman who does what she wants in her own way. Others about how generous she is with friends and family. And even more about how she's the best, most honest shepherd I have ever met. But knowing Cathe, she wouldn't enjoy such public airings of all those things. So I'll end with some words from one of her favorite authors, Ursula Le Guin, who wrote that, "You cannot buy the revolution, you cannot make the revolution. You can only be the revolution. It is in your spirit or it is nowhere." I don't know anyone else with such a quiet yet powerful revolutionary spirit as Cathe Capel. Congratulations on this much deserved recognition of you and your work.
Thank you, Katie, so much for sharing that. Really appreciate it. Also, want to invite, if you have been able to join us, Dane Nelson, are you present yet? Looks like maybe Dane has not been able to join us yet. So next, I'm going to invite Kevin Woltz, longtime collaborator with Cathe, to share some of your reflections about Cathe. Hello, Kevin. Thank you.
Hello. Well, geez, now that I'm crying and reflecting on all the last couple of years with Cathe, this is going to be hard to follow. Thank you, Katie, for really telling everyone how amazing Cathe is, and yeah, just giving everyone that I really appreciated hearing that as well. I just want to share a few stories about Cathe because, you know, as amazing as Cathe is, something that I really appreciate about Cathe and have been really just, you know, within 5 minutes of meeting Cathe, I knew that we were going to get along and that we're going to do great things together because Cathe is just such no nonsense and, you know, is always asking that question that we all want to be asking as we're revolutionizing agriculture, but she's always asking, well, if I'm not going to do it, then who's going to do it? Or if we're not going to do it now this year, then when are we going to do it? Like this is the time. Now's the time. And so I share a similar drive. And Cathe's just never ending kind of focus on how important and urgent the work that we're all doing is, and not only just calling it important, but putting it on her own shoulders and embodying that on her own farm, as a farmer, as a landowner, as a supporter of a Savannah Institute, as a collaborator. All of the roles, sometimes in the nonprofit world, we tend to put people into boxes of this is a collaborator, this is a landowner, but Cathe is literally in every single one of those boxes because she's trying to embody all of those things and make the difference in all of those areas. And I think that's something also really important about, the urgency that we're all feeling is that not only do we need to start it now, but we need to be just very forthcoming about it. We need to not hedge around the issue or beat around the bush. We don't have time to do that. We need to be very, very forthcoming about it. And Cathe is very blunt. I'm also very blunt, and I really appreciate that about Cathe. And just one little story to share. So I farm on some of Cathe's land. And so when I first met Cathe, we were negotiating our long-term lease, our long-term relationship together, 99-year lease. And which is a scary thing to think about. There's a lot, like so much is going to happen in the next 99 years. And Cathe, as we were going through it, Cathe said, well, there's stuff in here about what happens when I die, but what about when you die, Kevin? Like, what happens then? It's like, well, we should probably include that too. So then I had to add to my list, my to-do list for that week. I said I had to write down, make a will, because I never thought about that before. And Cathe was very good about reminding me that I'm mortal and I need to be thinking about this stuff too. And she had no qualms about, just if this is a 99-year lease, we need to talk about death. So let's do it. No more beating around the bush. And that's the kind of, I think, just bluntness that we all need to take as we're trying to do these really sometimes insurmountable things, and we need to tackle it head on, because we don't have time to waste to not do that, quite frankly. So thank you, Cathe, for just everything that we've done together over the last 8 years or so. And thank you for giving me the incentive to write a will for myself and think about my mortality. And I really look forward to all the cool things we're going to do on the farms as the trees start to produce.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate you sharing some reflections, appreciating Cathe as well. So it looks like Dane was not able to join us today, unfortunately. Maybe we'll find another way for Dane to share some of his reflections with the group if he'd like to. But with that, I want to, it's a little bit hard to do virtually here, but I guess we do have one more person to share here. I'm sorry, I overlooked that. Matt, are you prepared to share?
I'm here.
Matt Wilson. Okay, please do. Thank you.
Yeah. So, hey, Cathe. I first met Cathe when I was a new farmer. So we were both shepherds of an endangered breed of sheep called Leicester Longwool. And I remember one of my first visits to Cathe's place. I was living in Kentucky at the time, and I had driven all the way up to Illinois in my Mitsubishi Mighty Max pickup to put this ram in the back, and drove back to Kentucky in the same day. That was one of my first experiences with Cathe. And later, I had connected with Kevin and Keith at the Savannah Institute about an agroforestry project at the Berea College Farm where I was working, and heard about this thing called the Perennial Farm Gathering. And it was that second one in the community room of the co-op that you saw the picture of this morning. And I walked in, and there was Cathe sitting there, and I thought, what are you doing here? And then, of course, she would be involved in agroforestry and these kinds of really awesome projects. So she didn't hesitate to offer me a place to stay at her farm. And we kept in touch over the years, swapping sheep. She flew down one time with a pilot friend who needed to log hours on his plane. We picked her up at the local airport and brought her to the farm to see some sheep, and that was really fun. And then it came time for me to go to grad school, and I ended up at the University of Illinois, right there in Urbana, Champaign-Urbana. And at that point, Cathe was working with Kevin on, installing this crazy mix of fruit and nut trees on her property there in Sydney. And I ended up working with Kevin a few times, and would go out to the farm, and I was pruning or mowing or whatever, and I'd be able to look over and see my sheep, or maybe the progeny of my sheep, as I was working. And so keeping that connection was really cool, and being able to see Cathe then. And it was always a goal for me to participate kind of in the full experience of raising sheep, from lambing, and I learned to shear and process the wool. And when it came time for me to tackle learning to knit, I knew exactly who to reach out to. So I contacted Cathe just this fall. I was ready to dive in and make a sweater, and I'm happy to report that this morning I finished the last stitches on this. I haven't even tucked in the little bits here. And Cathe was so great. I had so many questions to ask, and she even sent me a book in the mail on how to make a knitting pattern and all that. So Cathe's kind of been a presence throughout my journey into farming and agroforestry. And she's always been quick to offer hospitality and knowledge and share her wisdom. And I really consider her a mentor, and just an amazing example of somebody walking the walk and making a difference in how we do agriculture in a landscape that desperately needs something new. So thank you, Cathe, for everything over the years, and for being an example to all of us.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing that. And I really appreciate it, and a tribute to Cathe, and really impressed with your sweater as well, I have to be honest. Great work. Cathe, would like to invite you, if you'd like to share a few words. And if you'd like to, you can share your screen while you do that, or you can just speak up.
I'm really flattered. I'm just kind of have tears running down my face. Actually, I wiped them off. I just had no idea people perceive me that way, I guess. It is really important to me what we're doing and what you're doing. And I guess my urgency has to do with the fact that I'm at least a generation older than most of you. Katie, thank you so much. And Matt, that sweater, it's beautiful. And Kevin, I so appreciate your participation in encouragement and allowing me to participate in your activities. It's just when I was a kid, I had a lot of exposure to farms, mostly in Southern Illinois, but in Central Illinois too. And they were nothing like they are now, because it's so many generations ago. And it just always seemed to me that it was criminal what was going on farms. And I just wanted to bring back that sense of, what Paul Johnson, was it Paul Johnson that got the first Deep Roots Award? His vision, that was so, it was so clear. It was, places of abundance and hope. But anyway, thanks you guys. Thanks very much. And I hope Hudson Farm works out really well.
Cathe, it's our honor and our privilege to present to you the Deep Roots Award this year. And really appreciate you so much, all that you are, and all that you've done as a part of this community. So on behalf of the whole community, thank you. Well, I might ask you actually, Cathe, we did, do you have the bowl that we sent as a token of our appreciation? It might be, if it's at hand and you'd like to show that to the group, that might be a nice thing to share too.
Yes, I'll go get it.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
So while Cathe is stepping away to show the physical manifestation of this award, which is a hand-turned bowl from here in southern Wisconsin, we're going to, there, if you can see Cathe's bowl
River
there.
birch. It's made from river birch.
And I think it's a wonderful representation of the space that you've held, the container that you've helped make for all of the wonderful things that this community is doing. So thank you again, Cathe.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
We're going to continue to share the spirit of appreciation here now as we move on to our new Shoots Award. And this award will be presenting to Kevin Wolz, who you just heard from. And so I'm going to take the liberty to share a few words myself about Kevin, since I've had the opportunity and privilege to work with Kevin for going on a decade now, not quite there, but it's really come more into focus for me as time has gone on, how significant it is that for all that Savannah Institute has been a group effort from the beginning, it really wouldn't exist without Kevin. And yet Kevin has very intentionally, and this is, I think, one of the chief things that's to his credit, never made it about himself. It's always been about building a vehicle, building a container for this community, because we all need to work together. It's going to take more than just Kevin for all of his efforts to really work at the scale we need to. And scale's always been important to Kevin. And I think when I first met Kevin, I thought he was thought scale was important because he was kind of a hotshot or something. But then I realized it wasn't about that at all. Kevin's just really a problem solver at heart. And the problem that he's laser focused on solving is climate change. And to really make a dent in climate change, we need to work at scale, which means we have to work together. And so while Kevin's been crystal clear on that vision and that purpose, unlike some visionaries, Kevin has never got in his own way by making it about himself. He's always recognized that it needs to be a group effort, and that's always what Savannah Institute has been, as well as many other things that Kevin's been involved in. Also, I think unlike some visionaries, Kevin's not just one that has a big idea or big ideas. He's an incredible doer. He's an engineer and he's a builder. And so he's always done a lot of heavy lifting. He's never shied away from doing the work, and he's really relished it, I think, in fact. And again, never wanted it to be about him. You know, he's the kind of person that won't tell you when today's his birthday. But if you're keeping track, I believe it's on Sunday. So if you want to bug him on Sunday and wish him a happy birthday, you can. but really, that's what I want to emphasize, is that Savannah Institute has always been and continues to be about community and purpose, where there's many of us working together on this world that we believe in. I do want to say a few things about working directly with Kevin for many years, and just what an incredible teammate he is. And I think that two of the short words that mean so much that I hear from Kevin so often are "I'm on it" or "I'm on it." And I just know that when Kevin says that it's taken care of. And that's just a great thing to be able to trust and depend on a teammate that way. And and as our team has grown, I think back to, you saw the 2017 slide of the Perennial Farm Gathering there, when it was Kevin and Christy and I as the only staff of the Savannah Institute, and we were all part-time and had lives and other things going on, but and it was really a group effort. But Kevin's always set the tone, and even before that 2017, when Kevin came over to be part of the staff, he was all volunteer before that as the chair of the board of directors. And so Kevin set the tone from the very beginning for our team in terms of excellence, not taking any shortcuts. Let's do what we're doing well. He set the tone in terms of passion. Let's stay laser focused on our purpose, our mission. He set the tone in terms of humility, in that it's not about knowing it all, and quite the opposite. It's about continuing to learn. And he set the tone in terms of cooperation, that we're going to get this done through teamwork and connection and having each other's backs. And about humanity too, for all that laser focus and drive. Kevin connects with people at a personal level, and our staff, we've been fortunate to have a lot of families growing and including Kevin's, and so exchanging baby clothes and gear, and especially throughout COVID, that's been important, that we all make space for life happening as well. And so I really appreciate that about Kevin as well. So Kevin really brings out the best in people through all those ways, and it's been a privilege to work with him. And Kevin, so part of recognizing Kevin now, it's been worthwhile to recognize him at any point, but there's a pivot in what Kevin's doing now. Many of you may have seen the announcement that he's stepping into a role as leading the business that Savannah Institute has been a part of setting up to provide agroforestry capacity to more landowners and farmers. But Kevin's remaining on Savannah Institute part-time, thankfully, as lead scientist, but it's been impossible to contain him into being just a scientist nonetheless. And even just this week on Tuesday, as Kevin is now working part-time with Savannah Institute, Kevin managed to figure out how to offer the SI staff a new benefit at no extra cost, dependent care flexible spending account. He shared a detailed design for what might be the world's largest alley cropping experiment, which we mentioned on Cathe's land. And he's helping figure out how to get the USDA to pay for tree planting for landowners who are members of historically underserved groups. And so that was just another Tuesday for Kevin. But for many of us, that it's pretty remarkable what Kevin accomplishes. And I've talked mostly about SIs and want to invite a few other folks to reflect here, because Kevin's been very driven to move the vision forward in other ways too. His scholarship, earning a PhD at the University of Illinois, which is a scholarship that's impacted the real world as well as the academic world. He's established 2 farms that are really unparalleled examples of agroforestry in the Midwest. And he's served for several years now as the board president of the Association for Temperate Agroforestry, and where he's really been vital to ushering in a new generation of leadership there and thinking critically about what sort of professional society agroforestry needs. So there's a lot that Kevin could claim as bragging rights, but I think, again, it's that he's not in it for the credit that really makes it remarkable and so enjoyable to work with Kevin. And that he sees that we need an agriculture where trees are our crops with diversified livestock and other crops. And so he's out to get as many of those kind of trees on the ground as possible. So thank you, Kevin. And there's much more I could say, but I still wouldn't do it justice to how much I appreciate you. So I'll ask others to help me appreciate you in that spirit. And let's see I failed to print out what my other speakers here were. So
Next up
maybe-
is Will Babler.
Thank you, Kate. Will, are you prepared to join us?
I am prepared.
Okay, thanks.
And
Will.
I thought this was a roast, so I'm going to have to throw out my old script here, but no, just kidding. I had the good fortune of way back in 2016. It was nice to see that slide early on, and I went to that early SI gathering, all those years ago. And my background was growing up on a farm in Southwest Wisconsin, having a long-standing interest in conservation, and come across these guys on the internet with these big schemes on agroforestry and trees in the ground, and so I need to go there and see what this is all about. And I was at this meeting, and it's a little bit like Keith led into. The SI has been fantastic for connections and experiences, and I was sitting around in a break, and I hear this guy talking about big ideas and big schemes, and kind of talking about different ways of interacting with farmers. And I thought to myself, you know what, this guy, he gets it. I need to talk to this guy. So talked to Kevin, and little did I know where that would lead to. You kind of fast forward to where we're at today, and I got pulled into the SI board. It's been a fantastic experience. Kevin and I jointly grow some currants and other miscellaneous crops down in Central Illinois together, and that's on the for-profit side, or at least trying to push forward in a at-scale approach to putting these ideas and practices on the ground. And then we've always along the way talked about how do we scale this up, and that's something I've always had a passion for, dealing in conventional agriculture, is that I think the world doesn't quite grasp the scale of what's going on, the good and the bad of that. And if we're going to really take a right turn and make some sort of giant asymmetric impact, we have to think about these things at scale. And Kevin has undoubtedly, as Keith said, led the way on that idea and that concept. And it's really been fun to work with him on that. I'm involved with some of the ideas and thoughts behind putting Campy together, and fortunate to be on the board there, and just watching Kevin go 1,000 miles an hour, getting that off the ground. And I think that, the whole industry and the whole movement is really going to benefit from that effort. I think just looking at the time that I spent with Kevin, there's a few things that stick out, but certainly the passion and the vision. There's a lot of people with big ideas and good ideas, but rarely do they get put into play in a way that he's done. I think the execution and the bringing it to the real world has just been amazing to watch. And whether it's just building up the nonprofit, getting trees in the ground, creating relationships, bringing in massive scale from funding and other participants, across the whole spectrum, from small farmers, researchers, big philanthropic donors, you name it. It's been something to see. And, I think the results speak for themselves. You can look at that side by the numbers. I'm a numbers guy. I like to see that. Anybody who's looking at the organization from the outside in and what he has helped to build there, and it's certainly been not just him, but the whole group. But what Kevin's really helped build there is just, if it was a for-profit, there'd be people banging down the doors to invest and get involved. And I think that says a lot about the growth there on the number of people and number of projects. Just looking at the work plan for this year and seeing that come into play versus what was talked about years back, it's just, it's incredible growth in that organization. In the real world, Kevin's put trees in the ground. I don't know what the count is, but it's a staggering amount of trees, and it's about to go exponential. So I think that's really exciting. And he's that idea. So many people who come at it from different angles, different interests, and he's been able to gather them up and really push this thing forward. So I think just to try to wrap up here and avoid going on and on, but I have a great appreciation for the opportunity to have worked with Kevin over this time. I would certainly encourage everybody to dig in deep on what he's building out here with Canopy with that team. I think it's going to be another example of, you know, where ideas and energy, you know, meet actual action and actual results on the ground. And it's something that, you know, certainly there's probably ways for everybody who's on this, you know, in this conference to get engaged in, either to help out, use the services, refer to friends, family, what have you. There's a lot of opportunities there. So I guess to wrap up, I just say thank you, Kevin, for all you've done. Really appreciative of, you know, our friendship, our partnerships in various endeavors, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you, Will. Really appreciate you sharing those thoughts. Bruce Branham. Bruce, are you on the call and ready to share? Would you like to share? Okay, Bruce, we can see your screen. It's the background of your desktop at the moment. Okay, Bruce, now we're off of your screen. So go ahead and unmute yourself if you haven't done so yet, if you're ready.
Okay, what do you see now?
We can see your desktop background.
Well, I'll just do that then. And,
Okay, yeah, if you, and we can see your face there now.
yeah, sorry about that. So thank you all. I've had the pleasure of knowing Kevin for quite a while. I think I met him when he was a freshman here at the University of Illinois. And I recall, you know, we've had a lot of things. And by the way, I'm a, you know, extension person by training. So I do a lot of talks. And typically, you know, it's an hour or 45 minutes and you can just kind of go off the top. But for 5 minutes, I actually had to write everything out because I didn't want to go too short or too long. But, you know, I've been as you can tell by my mug, I've been a academic for a lot of years, I think almost 40 years now. And so I've worked with a lot of students over those times. And Kevin is just head and shoulders separated from those, from all the other students I've worked with. He's talented, amazing, productive. But I think the two words that capture him are impact and vision. He's got a tremendous vision. I remember, I can't remember if his sophomore year or junior year, we're sitting in my office and he's trying to convince me about, you know, trees and how they can make a difference. And he shows me this elaborate spreadsheet he has. And it's got, you know, if we plant, I can't remember how many gazillion trees it was, we can actually lower, you know, the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. And I was like, no, I don't believe that. And he showed it and it's like, you know, and then like just a couple of years ago, there was this paper that came out that got a lot of press about the Trillion Tree Project. I was like, heck, Kevin could have written that 10 years ago. And so, you know, it's that vision that is it's just awesome. And so the way I really got, I realized how unique Kevin was his junior year here at the U of I. So most students are, you know, trying to figure out what kind of summer job they're going to have or whatever. Kevin came to me with this idea of testing agroforestry. He wanted to put in a trial as an undergraduate to compare agroforestry to conventional corn soybean rotation. And so, you know, I was kind of skeptical, but he said, well, I'll take care of it. Just, you know, you just need to help me get the land set up and so on. So we got that approved and he has, I think it was 2 acres total. So he acquired all the trees he needed, all the shrubs. I think he planted hazelnuts, chestnuts, apples, currants, raspberries, grapes. And then we had that compared to corn and soybeans. He acquired all that plant material. I remember he wanted to put in a tower, like a TV tower, so he could have a camera to kind of do a time-lapse photography of the thing. And he couldn't get anybody to help him. So he ended up digging out this pit for pouring the concrete. They came and poured that. So that's still out there today. He designed a solar array with a backup battery system. So he had power because we didn't have power at the site. He just has an incredible ability to get things done. So he got that all on the ground as a junior. And then he wrote a grant to the National Science Foundation to get a fellowship to fund his studies. Now, a typical grad student comes to U of I and they apply and a professor selects them and funds them and so on. Kevin turned that completely on its head. He went and kind of picked his professor, said, here's my project, here's the funding. Will you take me on? And the guy's like, well, sure, I don't have to do anything. He just did the whole thing himself. So, you know, it's just amazing the vision that young man has. And the other thing is the impact. When he left here, we not only had that original site, which is still there, by the way, and it's now in its it'll start its 11th growing season this spring, and is really maturing into a true agroforestry site. It's really neat to see. And then he also helped, he was instrumental in leading a team of faculty to get a grant that we call the Multifunctional Woody Polyculture Project, which is quite a large project. And I believe Kevin will be taking that over. So when you look at how he's drawn people in to help him achieve this vision, it's really impressive. So, you know, I've worked with Kevin and had the pleasure of you know, we wrote grants together, and he does, just like Keith said, when he says he's on it, you can count it. It's not only done, but done to like A+ level. So, you know, I have a deep appreciation for his vision, his tenacity, his work ethic, and just general brilliance. I mean, the guy really is able to do a lot of different things. He's not very narrow. He's kind of covers the whole spectrum. But I'm equally impressed with Kevin's just personal qualities. You know, he is a wonderful young man who has a lot of good friends and relationships. And despite being incredibly busy with enough on his plate to feed a small army, Kevin values personal relationships as well. And so, you know, he always reaches out to me when he's in town. He's a great friend to many, and I'm really just thankful that I can call him a friend as well. So it's been very rewarding to work with Kevin. I look forward to, the reason I wrote this out was because I hope I get to do this again at some point, because I think this guy will get some other awards throughout his career. So Kevin, congratulations on this. It's just a start, but you've made a heck of a lot of progress in these last 12 years. Congratulations.
Thank you, Bruce. Really appreciate that myself, hearing all that too. And I think it's good you wrote it out too. It'll come in handy if Kevin's ever before a judge for having planted trees where he's not supposed to, and you've got to give him a character witness. Maybe we can turn this into a roast after all, Will. One more person, if you're there, Kate Mcfarland, would love to invite you to share any thoughts that you have on reflecting on Kevin's place in moving agroforestry and things related forward. Kate, are you with us?
I am, thanks. Hi everyone, my name's Kate Mcfarland. I'm an agroforester with the USDA National Agroforestry Center, working out of an office in Burlington, Vermont. And I was really glad to hear that Kevin was getting this award, because when I think about the people who are really advancing agroforestry, really being those new shoots, helping all of us grow, Kevin is certainly a partner in that work and a leader in that work. I've gotten to know Kevin through a number of different projects that the National Agroforestry Center and the Savannah Institute have collaborated on, but also through so much other work that he's done through his research, through the Savannah Institute, through the Association for Comfort Agroforestry, and through the agroforestry practices that he's managing on farms as well. And when I think about some of the topics or keywords sort of that come to mind with Kevin's work, it covers some of the most sort of exciting and important issues that I see in agroforestry today. They aren't necessarily the buzzwords, but instead they're really key barriers and opportunities that sort of move all of us forward. I think of topics like land access and land equivalent ratios and over-yielding and plant materials and tree crop genetics, all these really key topics. A few years ago here at the National Agroforestry Center, we got to work with some really fantastic undergraduate students at the University of Nebraska. And they pulled together this index of agroforestry related projects funded by SARE programs across the country. So I went ahead and pulled up the projects that Kevin's lead on in the database. And I'm sure, like all SARE projects, and maybe especially SARE projects that Kevin is involved with, I know that these projects were developed in deep collaboration with others at the Savannah Institute and many other different partners, but just reading off the titles of those grants that Kevin is in the database as lead on, to me really illustrates these keywords in maybe a different way. So crop performance, pests and pollinators in diverse agroforestry systems, evaluating and sharing techniques in silvopasture establishment, agroforestry education using the collective experience of farmers, establishing a network of agroforestry research and demonstration farms, and the agroforestry apprenticeship program. So again, I know those are all done in collaboration, but when I hear those titles, some of the key themes that I hear and read in those grant descriptions reflect so much of what has already been said, right? They reflect the technical questions and the thinking about applied work and applied techniques that Kevin thinks about. They reflect the deep need that we all have and Kevin exemplifies, and partnerships and sharing. And finally, they reflect that ways that we bring education to the forefront of what we do, and we really try and learn from one another. So through, I think, these projects and so many others, Kevin's not just willing, but he's eager to work with others to suggest and take creative approaches to challenges. He's deliberate in identifying and working towards specific goals, and he tries to break down problems and combine sort of idealism and realism to help move us all forward. I guess, as a federal employee, I really appreciate his partnership and thinking about how we can use our government programs to support the public goods and the services created through agroforestry implementation. And Kevin's diligence in sort of seeking them out in creative ways, whether it's through conservation programs, through government data sources, or all the other efforts that are out there, and thinking about how we bring those to our agroforestry work, has been so wonderful for us at the National Agroforestry Center to sort of do in partnership. And finally, while I think when some people are really seeing a lot of the barriers between sort of nonprofit and for-profit and public sector approaches, Kevin is really great at sort of looking across and maybe above all of those barriers and seeing what we can pull out from each of those sectors to move agroforestry adoption and agroforestry management forward, bringing the whole agroforestry community sort of forward as well. So congratulations on the award. All of us at the National Agroforestry Center are really excited to continue working together for many years. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Really appreciate you sharing those reflections too. So with that, Kevin, I want to present you with the New Shoots Award and then give you a chance to share any reflections if you'd like to. So we weren't able to get it to you as you are out of town at the moment, but we also got you a bowl in recognition of the space that you've created and held for agroforestry. And you'll be delighted to learn that this beautiful bowl is made out of one of your favorite trees, the box elder. And so we continue to push you forward too, to think about how we can have high value tree crops of all kinds as a part of our landscape as well. So when you get back around, we'll be happy to give you this bowl too, in recognition of all the ways that we appreciate you. So congratulations, Kevin, and thank you. Is there anything you'd like to say or reflect?
Sure. Thank you, Keith, and thank you for the bowl. I don't think about box elder enough, so this is a good reason to think about it more. I'll just say a few quick things because I know lunch is next on the agenda here. Thank you to all of you who said something. I really appreciate that. I was not expecting all of this. Didn't really know about this that far ahead of time, so this is all a surprise. I really appreciate it, as uncomfortable as it makes me feel. But I just want to say that, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I think like that kind of goes for a lot of us here. Like the whole purpose of the Savannah Institute at its inception was, I'm surprised that Keith didn't mention the word that I use probably more than anything else, which is catalyst. For some reason that has stuck with me since high school biology, but like that's what the Savannah Institute was intended to be from the beginning. Not the ivory tower of knowledge, not the binder of standard operating procedures for agroforestry. Like we're here to catalyze the ideas from all of you, on this call and beyond, because no one really knows how to do this the right way, and so we need to, like, we have to all be in it together. Otherwise, yeah, it's just not going to go well. And you know, same thing with Kate said at the end of just like, you know, we can't silo ourselves into nonprofit, for profit, et cetera. Like, at the end of the day, when climate change has your farm by the throat because of the drought and no water, like, it's not going to matter which box you check on your tax return, but what entity you are. Like, we got to just make this happen no matter what constructs we have to use. And so yeah, and as I step into this new role with Canopy, like, it's the same thing. You know, we're not, Canopy is not intended to be the end all be all of, you know, this is how we need to manage agroforestry, this is what we need to do, or this is the last new thing that needs to be started to, you know, to make this a reality. But it's just a different catalyst with slightly different tools on hand and slightly different legal capabilities, and it's just another tool in the toolbox that we all have to push everything forward. And so I hope that we can get that off the ground well, and we can be a good tool for all of you to do all the amazing things you're doing and help scale everyone up. And I genuinely hope that I can continue to learn from all of you on all the things that we don't know yet. And I hope we can all do that intentionally and urgently, because it really is important. So thank you again for all the kind words. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to this new chapter in my role in the ecosystem. And I hope that will give me the opportunity to interact with so many more of you in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. What a perfect metaphor to end on there. You've been a keystone species in this ecosystem, and we'll continue to go through the succession that we need to. So we're really grateful that you're a part of it.